Since the beginning of history, people have used their own 2 feet, or the 4 feet of an animal, to go from place to place. Advances in how we travel, however, have had a profound effect on our society, economy, and lifestyle. Here are some examples. Steamboat. The steamboat was originally invented in France by Claude de Geoffroy in 1783. Many tried and failed to recreate the steamboat in America until in 1807 Robert Fulton, along with investor Robert Livingston, built the North River Steamboat, also known as Fulton's Folly. The advantage of the steamboat was the ability to travel against the flow of the river using mechanical power, and by 1830 steamboats were traveling up and down the Mississippi River, opening the Midwest for settlement and trade. Because of steamboats, St. Louis grew to be the largest city west of Pittsburgh and the second largest port in the country. The train. The steam locomotive was invented in the UK by Richard Trevithick in 1804. Americans copied British design, and the first American-built locomotive was used for passenger service along a 6-mile route in Charleston, South Carolina. By 1850, 9,000 miles of railroad lines had been built, and by 1860, railroad companies in the North and Midwest had constructed networks that linked nearly every major city. Trains provided passengers with a smooth ride, sometimes food to eat, and a place to sleep. Railroads helped move the Industrial Revolution in the early 1800s and the settlement of the West in the late 1800s. The bicycle. The dandy horse, invented in 1817, was the first bicycle with one main difference: the rider used his feet to propel forward. After many permutations and adjustments to the basic design, the safety bicycle was invented in the 1880s, changing the bicycle from a dangerous toy for young men to everyday transportation for men and, more importantly, for women. Women were now able to go where they wanted to go, when they wanted to go. As Susan B. Anthony said, "Let me tell you what I think of bicycling. I think it has done more to emancipate women than anything else in the world. It gives women a feeling of freedom and self-reliance. I stand and rejoice every time I see a woman ride by on a wheel, the picture of free, untrammeled womanhood." The bicycle also led to sartorial change in women's clothing, liberating them from corsets and ankle-length skirts. The automobile. The first automobile was built by Henry Ford in 1893. His first Model T was built in 1908, and by 1920 there were 8 million horseless carriages in America. But it wasn't until the late 1920s that automobile ownership took off, with more than half of American families owning a car in 1929. This new mobility helped create suburbia, roadside motels, and auto camping. 1 out of every 8 workers in the U.S. had a job related to the automobile. And as the automobile moved from being a tool to a leisure item, consumers wanted more expensive and glamorous cars. This led to a very important change to our society, which was the new and possibly disastrous trend of using credit for a product that loses value. The airplane. In 1903, the Wright brothers succeeded in inventing and flying the first airplane. Commercial use of the airplane began in 1918 when the U.S. Post Office began using airplanes to deliver mail, and there were a few passenger flights in 1913. In the few years following Charles Lindbergh's famous flight in 1927, investment in aviation tripled. Passenger air travel in the 20s and 30s was uncomfortable, with passengers wearing goggles and helmets for the journey. Once the pressurized cabin was invented, the golden age of flight began, and the rich and upper middle class could fly to their destination wearing fine clothing with lots of legroom, meals, and attractive stewardesses. In 1978, the Airline Deregulation Act, signed into law by Jimmy Carter, caused the cost of air travel to decline by almost 30%, and the middle class could now fly, and since the deregulation, passenger air travel has risen from 200 million to 840 million per year.